Thank you all so much for joining us. Welcome to our WGU Internship Week. My name is Addison Welsh, and I am the Internship and Experiential Learning Manager here at WGU. And this week is just a huge culmination of lots of different events that we have highlighting internships, both with employers, as well as hearing from students and their experiences, as well as also just some career development sessions that we have with our staff just to help you in your internship journey. And so today we have David joining us. He is a computer science student here at WGU, and he completed not one, but 2 internships with Mayo Clinic, which is truly incredible. And so we're going to learn more about his experience. But just a quick note, this session is recorded and it will be sent to you tomorrow. And then if I happen to add any resources into the chat, or if David has anything to share, I will be sure to send those in the email as well. I'll also give you a short survey. It's only 2 questions. We would really love your feedback so we can continue to improve these sessions. So, and with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, David. Thank you so much for joining us.
Sounds great. I am going to share my screen here. Okay. Is it coming through?
Yes, it did. That's beautiful.
Okay. Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Addison. I'm excited to talk about everything. Here I'm on the last slide, and we'll go back to the beginning. Yeah, excited to be here, excited to offer anything that I have. And yeah, I want to kind of start off with talking about a quote that I heard recently that I really like, which is by Isaac Newton that says, "I stand on the shoulders of giants." And just that wherever you've gotten in life, just recognizing like all the people who have come before you, and whether they have, developed things in the field that you've used and benefited from, or people that have directly helped you, just like kind of recognizing, how many people have helped you get to the point that you're at. And so I'm super excited to be able to offer anything. If anyone's able to get anything from this and learn something, then I'm thrilled about that. So yeah, my name is David Graham. I am a computer science student at WGU. I'm on my last term, hopefully, fingers crossed. And I just recently completed my second internship at the Mayo Clinic. The first one, was a data science and machine learning internship. The second one with the same team, just a different name, was a clinical research internship. And I worked on, data, like basically like all things like data and tech. So it's machine learning. I think we're getting some feedback. That's all right. So like machine learning, data analysis, and different things like that. And so feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. You can scan that. I would love to connect with anyone if you have any questions later on. We're going to be having questions at the end, but would love to connect with you guys. So first, I'm going to start with just an intro to my story, who I am, where I got to where I'm at now. So I chose WGU through a long kind of process. I started out going to a community college, and I did that for about a year. So I did 3 semesters there, and and throughout my like beginning journey, I didn't really have a good like headspace. I was mainly thinking about getting good grades, and just that's all I was focused on, rather than developing skills and like networking and stuff. And I just thought, you know what, let me just like throw everything into this, and by the time I get out, there'll be a job waiting for me, and it'll all work out great, and it'll be fantastic. And kind of as I got into it, and I went to a local university, the University of Pittsburgh, and it was very expensive. And throughout this, I kind of was at a crossroads where I was like, the market was really bad with tech jobs, and it still is honestly pretty rough right now. And so I was like, okay, I'm not able to get internships. I've been kind of applying here and there, but not able to get internships. I'm not totally sure if this field is the best for me, and kind of just had a lot of doubt. I was like, I'm gonna go into debt. There was a lot of like things that led me to switch to WGU. And so one of those being, money, the fact that the local universities were super expensive, and I had enough in savings to kind of cover a little bit, but was going to go into a lot of debt. And the other thing was skills. As I was going through traditional university, a lot of it is focused on academics and learning theories and concepts, and not so much getting hands-on tangible skills, whereas WGU is a lot more project-based. And learning about that, I said, okay, that aligns with me. I want to learn by doing and not just having these theoretical skills. And then also direction. Like I wanted, and this kind of ties in with skills. I wanted to have more direction. I was kind of confused about whether this was a good fit for me and whether I, really wanted to do this. And so I wanted to kind of get some more direction with that. And so that led me to the next point, which I'll talk about, which is career advising. And this is like something I really, really recommend for everyone is to meet with the career advising for WGU. I met with my career advisor, Christy Graham. I think she might be popping into this call a little bit later, but we worked through so many things. And I remember like the first time I met with her, it was very much like I didn't really have a good resume or LinkedIn or GitHub or anything. It was all kind of like sporadic and not very good. And she was just very honest, but very like, patient with me of just like, okay, like here are the things that we want to improve and let's start working on them now. Now's the time, now like when you're early on in your career, now's the time to be thinking about these things so that as you go forth, you will, you know what you're moving towards. Like you have an aim rather than just I think that this is working and you're like, no, this is what I'm working towards and I know that this will pay out. And so that was a huge point. And then the last thing I'll say before I talk about my internships is that networking is so, so, so important. And this is how I got my first internship. I wish I could say, oh, like I was a genius and I did all these things and that's what got me the first internship. But really a lot of like a big part of that is through networking and how I got this. And so I have a connection of someone that worked in Mayo Clinic and I was talking with her over a couple months and saying, hey, I'd love to get like some sort of internship. And she said, okay, I think like there's some people in my department that I could talk to. And so like, and I followed up with her and said, like, hey, like, would this be a possibility? And then we got that to work out. And so that is kind of how I ended up getting my first internship was through that connection there. And so next I'm going to talk about that first internship. And before getting there, though, there was a lot of preparation that I did to, whenever I got there to just hit the ground running. And internships are, just a really great opportunity to show what kind of worker you're going to be, showcase the work that you can do, and to really just like impress people as much as possible. And so before getting into it, and again, at the advice of this connection and through career advising, it was trying to learn as much as I can before getting there. And so I rearranged my courses. There was a WGU course on Intro to AI, and I like rearranged that to take that way earlier. I think it was like one of the second to last classes that I was going to take, but instead I bumped it up to take it to get ready for that internship. And it was, I learned some things for that, and there was a lot of like terminology that was new to me that was, exposed. So whenever I started to learn more, it just kept on building upon these building blocks so that when I got there, I knew more than if I hadn't done these things. The next thing, and this one was huge, and it was really, really, really helpful for me, was doing a Udemy course. And the nice thing about this too was I knew what I was going to be doing when I was there. Part of my struggle with computer science is it's so broad. There's so many different things you can do. You can do web development or back end or machine learning things, or there's all types of like fields you can focus on. But because I knew what I was going to be doing when I was there, I took a Udemy course on like intro machine learning and going over pandas and NumPy and building, regression models and boosted trees and all this kind of stuff. And so like going over those was so helpful. And even though I didn't get like the problem with tutorials is, they just tell you what to do and you do it. And so it's not equivalent to real world experience where you have problems and walls that you hit over and over and over again. And you're like, okay, how am I going to solve this? Whereas the tutorial is like, they kind of spoon feed you. And so you can't stop at a tutorial, but a tutorial is great and you get a lot of good experience. And that's what I found. So whenever I got there, I was able to like know, I was able to like be aware of these different technologies. So that whenever I got there, I was able to like impress them by some of the things that I knew rather than just like, I don't really know anything, like teach me. I like showing that I would take initiative with it. And then lastly, just continuing to network, like meeting with people. I met, continuing to meet with the person who I was connected with, as well as some other people that I know. Like one of my friends was doing a master's in machine learning and deep learning, and talking to him, like, what sort of things should I be paying attention to? What sort of things, like, how do I make the most out of this experience? And he gave me a few pointers there too. And so again, the theme, spoiler alert, like the theme of networking is going to be throughout this. And that's one of the biggest takeaways I feel like from my experience. Okay, so whenever I got to the internship, I have a few points I want to talk about. One is just like be hungry and show that you are hungry. And so like when you get there, try to like really try your best to knock the socks off of people and just say and just like go above and beyond. Like I would be when people woke up really early. I wasn't always the first one there, but I was almost always the last one there. And people would like one of the doctors that was walking through was like, dude, go home, you know? And so like just like doing this, like trying to go above and beyond, especially when we're in a tough market, especially when maybe you're struggling, maybe you're not struggling, maybe you're like totally, feeling good with everything, and that's okay. But even still, like you want to like I felt like I was behind, and so I wanted to like show people, hey, like I am gonna do what I can do to show that I belong here. And so the next thing I want to talk about is take ownership. I was working on a project, and it's especially towards the end when there's just like a lot and you have a lot of things that people are asking you to do, and there's so many things going on. It's easy to kind of just say, okay, I did what I was trying to do and just move on. But really what separates people is people that take ownership versus people that don't. And if you are like, this is my project, I don't care if I'm doing the bare minimum. I want to own this. If I'm living in a house and I own it, I'm going to treat it differently than if I rent in the house. And do that with your projects as well. And same thing with going above and beyond. So, and this was really important for me. Towards the end of my internship, there was someone else that was like a research fellow, and she was working on a project, and I was like, oh, like that's an interesting like problem that she was running into. And we had these like research meetings, and I was like listening to it, and I'm like, I wonder if I could do something about that. Like, I wonder if one of these ideas, which was using Gemini, and using like the API calls for Gemini to like solve this problem that she had. And so I started looking into that. I started tinkering with it. I still had to balance my like original work, and eventually I didn't like totally solve that right then, because it was only like 3 days left before I had to leave. But I did that, and with some of that work that I did, I sent that to my mentor and was like, hey, these are some of the things I tried. It didn't totally work, but this might be something interesting you guys could do more on. And I later on I found out that he was really impressed by that, and he thought like, oh wow, like he's somebody who when he comes across a problem, he will look for ways to
He's stepping out.
solve that problem. I'm hearing. I think we're good. Okay. And so yeah, just looking for ways to go above and beyond and try to impress people is huge. And then this was another thing that I met with somebody who I actually was applying for another internship. I didn't get it, but I connected with somebody, and I just asked him for some advice, and he said, look for ways to show your work, like always. And so this is huge. I don't know if everyone's in tech or computer science or data science, but this is a huge thing of looking for ways to show your work. You have to be able to display what you're capable of doing. And so that, you have to have a good GitHub portfolio. And so that was like a huge thing. But also when you're there, there's going to be ways that you can show your work. So for example, some of the advice he gave me was, try to like if you write up something, or if you work on a project and you have some sort of deliverables that you're presenting, look for ways that you can look for those opportunities so that you can take that and then show people and say, hey, here's what I did. And if you follow me on LinkedIn, which again, my LinkedIn QR code will be at the end as well. But if you follow me on LinkedIn, I made a post for something that I presented with my second internship, and just like looking for ways to say, hey, not only do I have these experiences, not only do I have this degree, but I actually can do it. And here's like how you can see what I did. And so that's definitely a huge thing. And then again, lastly, networking is so huge. I was able to like meet with people that again, applying for other internships or positions at Mayo that I didn't get, and still was able to meet with them and talk with them and ask for advice and just connect with them. And then he connected me with two other people, and I talked to them. And then someone else reached out to me randomly on LinkedIn, and I connected with him and got coffee with him. And so just looking for all these ways to connect with people, and especially in like this virtual world and with WGU being virtual, like I think that we as WGU students, I think we have a lot of advantages of like the way that WGU is, you know, uh, set up to where we can work on these projects and do these things that I think really works well. But one of the things that we have to go above and beyond is to put our best foot forward for in-person connections with people. And so that was definitely another thing that and I don't know if people, I'm more of an extrovert. I don't know if people are more introverts or extroverts, but whether that's tricky for you or you thrive in that environment, like I would say, like push yourself to try to do that and start doing it now. Because you just get better and better at it. It's a muscle, it's a skill that you have to develop. And so yeah, that kind of wraps out my first internship. And just again, some of the work that I did. If you have like more questions about like specific work that I did, feel free to like reach out to me. Again, it's more like machine learning and data science concepts, but I would be more than happy to like go in depth on a project or walk you through some like GitHub repositories that I have. But I'm not gonna go super deep into that right now for this one. But next, I want to talk about my second internship. And there's a few things here that I want to touch on. First is like while I was and I was in Minnesota for this, while I was in Minnesota, I was applying for all these things. And again, the market is really rough right now. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I was applying for tons and tons of internships and jobs and different things like that, and just like not hearing back anything or hearing back no from so many of them. And it's kind of discouraging. It honestly is like a pretty discouraging process, but you have to keep going with it. But there's a few things here that I want to touch on for like applying for internships and giving like specific advice, little like helpful tidbits. One is ChatGPT to format your resume. You can go too far with this, and ChatGPT can it just sounds like ChatGPT, and people know. And there was actually, whenever I came back from my second internship, somebody made a joke. He was like, he reviewed all of our internships, all the people who applied for this program, and there's like a question of like, who uses ChatGPT, and he's like, yeah, I know all you do because I read all of your applications. And so like, yeah, it can definitely be too obvious, but use it to help you and get over writer's block and to help you format things and put in the keywords from applications that you're applying to, and just like lean on that kind of heavily. The next thing was LinkedIn. This was actually really like, I don't know, this was a cool thing for me. I was kind of I really liked using LinkedIn for this. Whenever I would apply for something, I would go on LinkedIn's alumni tool, and I'm sure that Addison or can share a link to this if she has that. But there's a LinkedIn alumni tool, and you can go there, check on okay, like let's say I'm applying for Mayo Clinic or Facebook or a local company in your area. You can check the WGU alumni who work there, and then you can go to them and then message them on LinkedIn, send them a connect request and say, hey, my name is whatever, and I'm interested in this. Would you mind pushing my application through? And that was one that, sometimes you don't get anything back, but, who cares? You're never going to see these people again. But one time in particular, I reached out to somebody and I said, I said this, and he sent like a group email with me and the hiring manager, and I think like the program manager, and said, hey, I've had the privilege of like working with David and, all this kind of stuff. And he goes to WGU, and I recommend him for this position. And it was pretty, like, I was blown away by that. And I actually asked him to kind of mentor me on a project after that. And it didn't end up panning out. I think he got really busy. And, but either way, that was awesome that he did that. And I didn't end up getting that position either. But that was a really cool thing that I really recommend for people to do, is like a small tip. And then again, recommending career advising. I met with Christy like every other week. I would just like set up meetings and say, like, here are the things I want to talk about. Here's what I did from the last time we met. And just really, lean into that heavily. And that's what I did. And I really benefited a lot from that. And I would get like little tidbits of advice or things, practice for interviews or different things like that. Okay, so that's for the application process. Next, I was home for 2 months before I came back for the second internship. And in that time, I mentioned how you was trying to work on a tool to help another research student. While I was home, I worked on that project using open source tools, and I built an open source large language model and fine-tuned it for this specific project. And this worked out because the data that I was using was public data, and so it wasn't, proprietary, that, it's not violating PHI laws. But I used this public data and I built this tool, and it worked okay. By the time that I finished, I learned a ton from this project. And while I was working on that, I was meeting with different people. I met with, an AI engineer friend that I had, and like another friend, and was like just bouncing ideas off of them. They were like, "Hey, why don't you try this?" And some of their advice like really like took it to the next level. And then when I came back, I was like, "Hey, I don't know if you're still working on this project, but I worked on this." And she was like, "Yeah, this is perfect timing. I'm hoping to like get this rolling." And so I used more data that she gave me, and then it ended up working really, really well. And I like it had like a 97% accuracy, which tangent is whenever you are showing your work, always include how well something did. Always include metrics for your success. And so after that worked and they used it for this project, it was like I was able to put that on my LinkedIn, put it on my GitHub, and say, "Hey, here's what I did. Here's how well the project did, and here's the real world problem that it solved." And that was definitely like a huge boost in confidence. And and it also just showed like, okay, hey, this kid, he like knows what he's doing, or he's a hard worker, whatever it is. It kind of continues to like develop a brand of like who you are as a person. And that's something that was that I would recommend for people to look out for opportunities to do that. And so, yeah, whenever I got back, I was building upon projects that I had. I was working with the same team. I was, again, networking with people, and, meeting for coffee, and like just meeting with people a lot, and then working on these projects that I had, and again, taking ownership and making things look well. Like, so like I was putting together this poster presentation that I was presenting at a conference, and I took a long time to uh, like make it look pretty. So it was like I'm not really doing my machine learning projects, but I am spending this time to make it look good so that it's presentable and that it looks good for people and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, look out for opportunities to do that. And it was also, I don't know, this maybe is a tangent, but one of the projects that I was working on actually didn't end up, wasn't a predictive. Like we're building these predictive models, and ideally you want something to be predictive. You want, to put in data, and then the model spits out the output, and you want that output to be correct, and you want to, to measure that. And I was working on this project, and I was just hitting walls, and it was not predictive at all. And so that's another thing. It's just like, it's okay. It's okay if that doesn't happen. It was kind of discouraging, and I was like, oh no, like this project that I'm working on, like it's a dud and it's not working, but it's okay. And you just have to keep doing it, and then look for ways that you can still show your work. So I did like a kind of a simple univariable regression analysis instead of having like a full-on machine learning project. And then I said, hey, I tried to build this machine learning model with NLP, and it didn't totally work, but that's still interesting. It still shows that it's not predictive. And so maybe we, either need new data to come in, or it's just not something that we can have to be predictive, which I'm getting a little bit in the weeds there, but yeah. And so, yeah, and again, networking is so important. So that kind of wraps up my two internship experiences. And now I'm going to go into a little bit of what I would have done differently and what I think I did well, and then we'll get into questions towards the end. So what I would have done differently is I would have started earlier. I wouldn't have been so focused on schooling and just getting these grades. I would have been like, how can I just develop these skills? For the first 2 years of my computer science program, I didn't have any projects that I could showcase my skills, which is kind of ridiculous. And so that is one thing that I can't stress enough, is work on projects and start doing these things now. Don't kick it down the road and just think, you know what, I'll worry about that when I graduate. Like, now is the time, and now you can talk to your professors. And I've even like worked on a project and met with a professor to say like, hey, like, what do you think about this? And so like utilize that, and utilize like this time that you're in right now to start doing this. And then another thing I would say is worry less. I struggled with a lot of anxiety with this whole application process. There was times I literally like could not go to sleep. My brain was just like working on these things, and I was getting like fearful about the future and all these kind of things. And I met with a doctor at Mayo, and he's also like an IT guy, and he was telling me, like, I asked him for like what would be like his biggest advice, and he said work hard and worry less. And I really really like that, because if you're working hard and you're doing the things, even if it's, again, like in my case, I realized I've been working hard, I've been working at these classes, but I haven't been working well. It doesn't matter. Like work, like figure out the ways that you can work well, but keep working hard. But then don't worry as much. Like go to bed and know that, hey, I did all that I can do today. Tomorrow's a new day. Don't worry about a year down the line. Just worry about one day at a time. And don't worry as much. We live in an age, I feel like, where, I mean, I know a lot of my friends struggle with anxiety, and just that's it's just difficult. And I don't want to like brush past that. And it's easy to say like, oh, I had these 2 internships, and here are like the things that I did well and stuff, but it was really hard. And I want to kind of encourage people if you are struggling with that. And then another thing I would have done differently is love learning. And they say this in all these applications, like you have to love learning. And I think what I realized about myself is I didn't love learning. I loved succeeding. I loved to just feel like I did something. And so then whenever I'm learning a new project, learning like a new concept, I'm like frustrated because I'm like, I don't know this. I'm not succeeding. But you have to like retrain your brain to just love learning and say, I don't care that I don't know this right now. Actually, I actually like the fact that I don't know this right now, because it gives me an opportunity to learn. And so that's another thing that I would have done differently, that I think I started to pick up as it's gone, and it's something I still need to work on. It still need to develop. So now, next, last thing I want to talk about, what I did well. I think getting help. So again, career advising, talking to friends, asking for help, asking for advice, meet networking with people that like utilize your network. That's a huge, huge thing that I think I did really well. I leaned into that pretty hard, and people want to help too. Like again, like connect with me on LinkedIn and reach out to me. I'm happy to help. Like people are happy to help, especially people that have struggled because they know how hard it is. And people are happy to help you. And so reach out. And the next thing, again, work hard. I think I did. Again, I learned how to work better, but I think in the meantime I did work hard. Again, I stayed late, working at this internship, and when I got home, even after I'm getting home at like 6, 7 p.m., I'm getting home and then watching YouTube videos on how to do these other things and get ready for the next day. And it's just a grind season. It's not sustainable, and it's not something you should do for the rest of your life. But if you realize like, and again, for me, I feel like, and I took a couple gap years too, like before I got into college. I just felt like I feel behind, and so I worked more at that. You could definitely strike a little bit more of a work-life balance, but still work hard. And that's like something I think I did well. The next thing is LinkedIn. Just utilize LinkedIn as much as possible, and then ChatGPT with like AI tools. Again, with formatting your resume or sending emails. I can't tell you how many times I've drafted an email and I tell ChatGPT, make this sound better, just to present like your best self. And again, you don't want it to be too like a dead giveaway for ChatGPT, but utilize these tools. It's really a remarkable age that we live in with AI, and it's a shame to not take advantage of these tools, I think. And so, yeah, with that, I think that covers all that I wanted to talk about. I'll give some final takeaways, and then we'll go for questions at the end. Again, if you didn't already pick up on it, network, network, network as much as possible. Like network, put your best foot forward, meet face to face with people, and do that as much as you can. Secondly is just do it. Just work on your projects. Say, okay, I want to be a computer scientist. I want to be a front-end web developer. Okay, then start developing a front-end web application. And you're like, well, I don't know how to do that. That's okay. There's tons of tutorials on YouTube, and start doing that. And then you might have an idea that comes up with like, oh, like I want to do this for my own, idea. Even if it goes nowhere. I worked on a project that was a real estate, like a web scraper, and I was like, I thought this was going to be great, and all these people were going to use it. And so far, it's been used twice, which is still something, and I still put that on my LinkedIn that it was used twice by companies. But it doesn't matter like how many people use it. It's better if more people use it, but just do it. Just do something, and you'll learn so much from that. And even if it's more of a dud, you'll take what you learned and do that for a project that's better. And show your work. Please show your work. So like learn GitHub. There's a class for WGU on GitHub. And then there's also other, supplemental materials that you can do and show your projects. And then again, lastly, and just I want you to kind of walk away remembering this is just work hard and worry less. So yeah, that is it. Again, please scan my LinkedIn and send me a connect request. I would love to connect with you and learn more about who you guys are and what kind of things excite you, and where you're getting stuck or anything that I could help with. So with that, I will leave room for questions.
Thank you, David. That was great. I think that you have shared so many great tips, just about how you were successful and then the things that you did during your internship. I've got a couple questions for you, but we're going to start with some that are in the chat here. So we've got, for students like me who are on the AI machine learning track and the computer science degree, which Udemy courses did you take in order to help you get to where you are at now?
Great question. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Um, it was I can't remember. It was Jose. His first name was Jose, who was like the director. I can send it out to you, Addison, later. But
Okay,
there was
great.
one that was a basic, going through Python and Pandas and machine learning. And it was funny because I met with somebody and I told him like these were the things that I was working through this Udemy course, and I was like, is this good? Like, and he was like, yeah, it's pretty basic, but it's okay. Like you're like learning these things and you need to start somewhere. But that was super helpful for me to start there.
I love that. I love this emphasis too of just learning, and also just trying things. Like you said, you only had 2 instances of companies using what you created, but it's also just having that experience and demonstrating that you have those skills. All right, so the next question we have, and thank you, David, for sending over that course. I'll be sure to include that with the recording in the email that I send out. Would you recommend Udemy instead of self-learning? I'm learning SQL and Python along with Pandas, NumPy, a lot of things that I can't pronounce. That's me, not the student. But I'm only able to do it on my days off. Would Udemy or other resources be a better approach?
I guess if this person could maybe speak to what they mean by self-learning, because I see Udemy as a way of self-learning, um, but I'm not sure, like, do you mean like just working on personal projects or watching YouTube videos versus Udemy? If that's the case, I would say like a mixture of all, if you have an idea to work on a personal project, I would do that first. Like that's personal projects are the best. Udemy and other tutorials help you to get to the point where you can work on personal projects. So yeah, I would say prioritize personal projects.
Great. And if you want to add more to that question, please feel free to pop in the chat. You're also welcome to come off of mute as well. Um, Next up, what stacks are you working with or were you working with at Mayo Clinic?
I did a lot with Google Cloud Platform, if this is what you're asking about. And so I worked on like Vertex AI, and like then like opening a Jupyter notebook within Google Cloud Platform and then also pulling from BigQuery. And so then and that was where SQL was used. SQL is used to pull data from BigQuery. And then you pull that in, and then I use Python to, manipulate the data and all that. And then scikit-learn was another library that I used to build these specific machine learning models. And then also Hugging Face is what I used for the natural language processing that I did for like that project that I did for the 2 months in between that the research fellow was working on. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. If you have more questions about the stacks, reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Great. All right. And then did your internship lead to a job offer? And did you consider starting in a position before you graduated since you now have some experience? So I guess it's a two-pronged question there.
Yeah, and also since I stopped sharing my screen, I put my link there in the chat. Yeah, so it didn't lead to a job offer. It's interesting because at Mayo, a lot of it is like you have to have like a master's degree or like there's kind of a lot of that going on. However, and like if like I had a somebody who was helping me out who was a biostatistician, and in order to be like a biostatistician, you kind of have to have like a master's degree, at least at Mayo Clinic. And so there weren't there weren't a ton of options like readily available. However, I was talking to my mentor and the person who got me the position in the first place, and she was talking to my mentor and saying like, hey, would you be interested in having David as somebody to just like help you with your projects that you're working on? And so that was kind of like those, and again, those were just words, and they were talking to like their higher up and saying like, what, could we like open up an opportunity for something like this to happen? However, uh, like there's a few things here. One is that I got a program. I'm going to start a program soon, hopefully, that is like a data engineering program. And so like because I got that, and it's here in Pittsburgh, I wanted to stay in Pittsburgh and I wanted to be in person. And so I decided to like pursue that route. There's been a few complications with it and it might fall through, which is okay, just gotta keep kind of hop back on the horse and keep going. But that's why I didn't like heavily pursue that route. And somebody also told me like as much as you can do in person when you're starting to build your career, do that. And so I didn't want to relocate to Rochester, Minnesota. As much as I liked my time there, I have a lot of friends and family and people that I know in Pittsburgh, and I wanted to stay in Pittsburgh and I wanted to be in person at whatever company I worked at. And so that was kind of like my hierarchy of choices. I wanted to be in person first and foremost in Pittsburgh. Then after that, I would go for a remote position and then look for like in-person opportunities from that. And then after that, I would relocate if I had to. That was kind of like my, order of preference with that. So all that to say, everyone's path will look different and your preferences and what you're trying to do. But that was how I made my decision.
Great. All right. We've got some other questions in the chat, but it looks like Adrian, you raised your hand, and since you're having the courage to come off of mute, I'm going to hand it over to you.
I think you're muted, Adrian. I can't hear you.
Oh, oh yeah, no problem. Give me 1 second.
I think we got it. We can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you
Oh,
now.
okay. Awesome. Perfect. Well, I just wanted to say thank you, Addison, and David, for taking the time to speak with us and giving us encouragement, especially during the tough job market, trying to find an internship or an entry-level job. It has been rigorous, but from the passion that you speak of everything that you've gone through, the trials and tribulations, it sounds like you've really found your path in the industry, especially with everything that you've learned, especially through Udemy and WGU, and even outside of the institutional um, knowledge, I should say, through YouTube and everything. I just want to know how did you integrate everything that you learned through institutions and even your outside knowledge into your internships and entry level positions and everything like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say at times not very well. I like there's a lot that you learn or like with like different classes I think I like learned more from or like was like like I kind of like didn't learn as much as I could have, and a lot of this is you get out what you put into it. But I would say the biggest thing is like for me, I guess with my experiences, it really helped me to have like something tangible that was like right ahead of like kind of like a carrot like dangling ahead of me of like, okay, I need to learn about XGBoost and random forests in order to do my work tomorrow. And so therefore I'm going to learn about that so that I tomorrow when I show up to work, I'm able to do that. And so that was like a huge thing for me. But all that to say is again, like kind of with the I stand on the shoulders of giants quote that I opened up with, you don't know how like what you're learning actually like helps you in ways that you don't realize. Like there was like one of the I helped a doctor with like a side project he was working on, and it kind of like impressed him. I was able to get it done in a day, and he was like struggling with it. So it was like that there was a lot of things that I was like, oh, I remember talking to someone a year ago about this, or I remember learning about this in my class, and I was kind of like fuzzy on it, but it actually did help me in this case. And so like in that, I would say like there's so many things that you don't realize that are helping you that again, the more you learn and are just like, I want to learn about this because I want to learn about it. I don't care if I'm able to use this right away. You will find that they stack up. And I would say that's like my biggest advice for like how to pull things in. Yeah, it helps whenever you have, a deadline tomorrow and something that you need to work on. But at the same time, just trust that you are learning these things. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate that answer. And yeah, no, this has really given me it's given me encouragement to keep on pursuing everything that I've been attaining. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, David. Thank you so much, Addison. Thank you, everyone here.
That's awesome. Yeah, appreciate the question, Adrian. Nice to meet you.
Yes. Nice to meet
Thank
you
you
too.
for
Yes,
being
sir.
here. And thank you for having the courage to come off of mute. I know it's easier to pop it in the chat.
In my opinion, I feel like it's easier to just say it, but hey, everyone is.
I love that. That's great.
Thank you. Thank
It's
you.
wonderful having you. Wonderful. I think our next question here is, what do you think made your application stand out?
Yeah, I mean, I got rejected for a lot of them. And so I don't know. I would say I think as I've gone on to and like where my application is right now, as much like numbers as you can throw in and relevant tools that you can throw in there to have experience with. So I think like Google Cloud Platform, that's definitely like a buzzword, and saying like, oh yeah, like SQL and Python and these like writing these queries and for Google BigQuery, like all of those I think are huge to like have and like I know there's like a trope of like it's not what you know but who you know, and I think that only is true to an extent, that and again my networking was like one of the main like things for my presentation. And networking is so important. However, I remember one of my first meetings I met with like someone who was like a neighbor of mine that had a really successful career and like were high up in the company, and I was asking them like questions about like how do I get the internship, and it kind of came down to like, I mean, as much as your like personality can come up, it also matters just like what you know. Which kind of at first I'm like, well, I don't know anything, so that was like really discouraging. However, like as you are meeting with these people and like as you're like making these connections, you learn like what should I know, and then you're like, okay, well, let me work on that. And so that was a big thing with like again like Python and Google Cloud Platform, like Amazon Web Services would be another great one that I see. And yeah, there's so many things. Of also as you're applying for stuff, you'll see the things that keep popping up more and more and more. So if you're looking for a data analyst position, you'll see we prefer someone to know Python and SQL. You'll see we want someone to be familiar with like cloud platforms like Google or AWS. And you'll be like, okay, I keep seeing these things. Let me start to learn those. And so like that's another thing that I incorporated and put on my application. But then again, like the last thing is just trying to get that in-person connection every time you can. Be creative, like with reaching out to people on LinkedIn. Your application is so much better when the person knows you, and that's just like the a matter of fact. And so, yeah, I hope that all that helps. Those are like a few different points that I hit on, but those are the things that I would say I did that made my application better.
We could probably spend an entire session, I think, just on that. But I love that idea of almost working backwards. And we tell students that, like conducting a gap analysis and understanding, what is it that the industry wants? What are you seeing in the positions that you want? And then really focusing, your growth and development on that. I will also say too, I know you've mentioned it so many times and so appreciate it, be sure to lean into career and professional development. We can help you with that resume. We can help you with that LinkedIn, because not only is it important to have the experience, but it's really important to be able to showcase it. And like you said, really demonstrating that impact. And so all of those services are free, whether you're a student or an alumni. So please, take advantage of
And,
those.
and real quick too, like I'm a skeptic with stuff. If people suggest stuff to me, I'm like, like, is it really that helpful? And career advising I cannot like I cannot stress enough how helpful it was for me.
I love to hear that. I would agree. Is one thing I didn't take advantage of when I was doing my studies, and certainly wish I did. Um, all right, next question. At what point, course-wise or term-wise, did you feel confident enough to do projects and apply to internships during your computer science degree?
Yeah, this is a great question. So it was kind of an iterative process, I would say. And in ways I'm still, insecure about my skills. But the first project that I ever did, I was going through a Python course, and maybe I'll send this one to you, Addison, as well. It was a like Mosh, it was code with Mosh, if anyone is familiar with him. But I went through this Python course, and it was going through things, and there was this one point where he was talking about web scraping, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, and then that led me to think, oh, this would be interesting to do with like real estate data. And so I wouldn't say I was ever like confident that I could do it. Like I was like, oh, now I know enough to do this project. It was like, oh, like I have an idea. Let me see if I can do this. And I think like, and it's hard to do that when you feel like you don't. I know, like I had other ideas before that I never executed on because I just like didn't feel like I knew enough. And I would say it wasn't that I knew enough whenever I started doing these other projects. It was that I was too afraid to act on them before, and I should have acted on them earlier. And so if you're feeling like, oh, I don't know if I know enough, it's you do know enough. And because part of the huge like learning curve is like as you're doing these projects, you run into these, problems, and then you're like, and then you talk to someone, or there's been times whenever I was like coding something and I was like writing this code and I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I learned. Like this is polymorphism and that I learned in like object-oriented programming, or like this is, whatever, like this is data abstraction, or like, all these different concepts that you learn. I'm like, I'm actually using this right now. And so if you do these projects, whether it's before or after you learn, you're able to make these connections. And then you're also, whenever you are learning more things, like if you get into data structures and algorithms, for example, if you're a computer science student, like doing some of these things, you'll see, oh, this is where like a linked list might be helpful, or this is where a dictionary is used, or like, different things like that. And then you'll like learn so much better after having actually done something. And so I would just say like you're always ready, and lean into ChatGPT to help you, like, because on personal projects you're not cheating anyone. But if you use ChatGPT, you're helping you. Like I've used it so much whenever I'm like, I don't know how to do this, and then I'm like, hey, here's my attempt, and then ChatGPT will be like, hey, try this, and sometimes it doesn't work, and then I have to figure out why it was wrong. But like that process you learn a lot through. And I think that that really does help you to be ready at any point, because you have like basically pretend like you have a mentor that's sitting right next to you all the time and is saying, hey, do this, like try this. Have you thought of this? Obviously, you can rely on ChatGPT too much, and okay, you have this great project, but you didn't know how to do it. You just copy and pasted some code. Okay, you can't even like talk about the project. That's not that's a misuse of ChatGPT, but that's what I would say.
I think that's great, though. I think that one thing employers really look for with anyone working in the tech field is that ability to problem solve. That's what I'm hearing time and time again. It's just like going through these processes, right, and refining the way that you do it. I love that. All right. So if you don't mind sharing, how did you balance internship applications and internship work alongside your WGU coursework?
Yes. So the first time I had my internship, I actually put WGU on pause. It worked out that I finished my term and then I put it on pause, and my program mentor was like, "Hey, this is a valid option." And so if it lines up well, then I would suggest doing that, because you want to be, yeah, as much like, and you'll hear people that are like, I was working full time, I had this internship, and I was doing school, and it's kind of like, okay, like good for you, but like the most that you can like like lean into like an internship experience, you like do that, like lean into the internship, learn as much as you can, especially if you were similar to me, where I'm like, I don't have a lot of these skills. Like if you're, you have, these projects, or you worked on this program that is used by people, and you have a lot more skills, then sure, like then you have to weigh out, okay, I value getting my degree done quicker, so like I'm going to do that in the evenings, for example. But for me, I was like, no, I need to gain skills, and so in the evenings I'm going to be doing the same kind of work that I was doing during the day, and that was what I chose to, like, how I chose to spend my time. um all that being said, is then whenever I got into the second one, I couldn't take any more breaks. I was like, can we extend this past 5 months? And I couldn't. So I had to start it while I was in my program. And so I balanced it out to where I spent more time on my internship, and then spent whatever time I could on my WGU. If I had to do that for a long period of time, then I would have to kind of get into a rhythm of like, no, in the evenings I can only do WGU, or else, I'm never going to get this done. So all I'd say is like, that's how I did it. If you can take a term break, do it. But if you get to the point where you're like, okay, like I'm feeling more confident, I have more and more skills, now I just want to get my degree done. Then you can kind of like pivot your, like how you allocate your time.
I think too, just, as you think about like, as you start to research, different internship opportunities, check to see, do you have to be a current student, or can you be a recent graduate as well? Because if you're a recent grad, maybe it's better for you to complete after you complete your program, because it is a lot. You're
Right.
definitely right.
Yeah, and everyone's in a different boat. So like,
Yeah,
you can, if anything's helpful from what I say, then, feel free to implement it, but like do whatever works for you.
I love that. Yep. All right, I have a hard time narrowing in and specializing on anything specific because my interests are so broad across so many technology fields. Did you ever find yourself spreading yourself too thin across the wide world of technologies to learn? And any advice on reining that in and developing a more focused plan to enter the workforce? That's a great question.
Yeah, I would say uh, I didn't have that problem. My problem was like I just kind of got like paralyzed a little bit by like what I didn't know, and it wasn't like, oh, I'm so interested in this and I'm interested in this. It was like I just didn't know how to do stuff. But it's kind of similar though, in the sense of like you're not like executing on one thing. And so I would say like to both, whether you feel like you're struggling with like, I just don't know, or I have so many interests and I don't know what I want to hone in on. Like, first of all, that's a good problem to have. Like having so many interests that you don't know which one to focus on, I think shows that you are someone who really likes to learn and someone that you do these things. So like kudos to you for that. Like that's really awesome and like lean into that. Um, However, there is an importance of like going in on one project. And so if you find that so many interests leads to you bouncing back and forth and not sticking to one project, then yeah, like then hone in, like pick one project and finish it to completion. The person that got me the internship, she had a PhD and an MD, and she like said that one thing she learned throughout her process was like she was someone who just got something done. And like that was what her advisor like said about her, was that like she had a problem and she would do it until completion. And that also comes with like taking ownership. So it's like if you were an owner, would you, want your projects to just be kind of spread thin? It's like, no, you'd want them to get done. And so kind of treat it like that is what I would say.
Great. Awesome. All right. Um,
And
Hello,
I think I
David.
can take one more
Yes, I think
question,
now we're
Madison.
getting a little close. I think actually this might be the last one. So, hello, David. I'm about 2 terms away from graduating from my Bachelor of Science, Cybersecurity Information Assurance. I admittedly haven't done much networking yet, but I do have a fairly strong relationship with a friend who's working at a company that's based around hosting LLMs and similar AI models. I've asked him if they're looking for cybersecurity interns or part-time employees, and he said that they're not at the moment, but I was wondering if I should try to go for a different internship or a part-time job with them by trying to learn some new skills or try something else. Do you have any advice?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I think it depends. So I'm reading this book right now that's called So Good They Can't Ignore You. And it talks about like there's like this passion hypothesis, which is like follow your passion and then everything else will follow. And this book, again, it's just one idea, but it kind of rejects that and says you should try to gain valuable skills rather than focusing on following your passion, because the better you get at something, the more like satisfaction you'll find out of the work. And the more that, instead of thinking, what can this provide for me? How can it make me more satisfied, and focusing on yourself, you're thinking, how can I provide value to the world? And that not only is more attractive as an employer, who hears that, but it also like kind of paradoxically helps you to feel more satisfaction. And so I would say like it depends. If you are like, oh, I am like I really love cybersecurity and I want to do this, I would apply for as much as possible. And I would say if you don't get anything that's like, I really want to do this, but you do get something where they're like, hey, we want you to write back end code, or we want you to work on front end web development. And if that's appealing to you and you think like there's room for me to grow and I would love to like learn more about this, I would say go for it, because not only can you gain the skill that will make you a more valuable cybersecurity specialist, because now all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I have experience with front end and I know what that's like. So when you try to, when you're whatever you're doing with cybersecurity, this other aspect, or about this team that you're working with. You understand the lingo that they're throwing around, um, and on top of that, if you're working in that field, you're also can be looking out for ways like, hey, can I shadow somebody who's a cybersecurity specialist? Can I connect with somebody on this? Can I work on this project that they're working on if I get all my stuff done in time, and then work on this like with any additional time that I have? Whatever, I think um, so yeah, I guess to kind of like consolidate that, I would say apply for as much as you can, and reach out, like even if like this is looking promising, like apply for as much as you can. Uh, if you get something that you're more excited about, like that's amazing. Go for it. If you don't and you get something like this, that's also very amazing, and lean into that as much as you can.
I think that's great advice. Um, excellent. All right. Well, I think David, we're just about there. I love this approach though of networking and even just like information interviews and asking, as you meet people during these internship experiences, asking for a 15-minute coffee chat, things like that, because you never know where those opportunities might lead and where those relationships may take you as well. And so this has been a phenomenal conversation. Thank you, David, so much for all that you shared. And thank you for all of you for your great questions, because without your engagement, it's not nearly as enjoyable. And so we have a lot of other great sessions happening this week. We actually have one that starts here in about 6 minutes with Stride, if you're curious about learning about their internship program. And then we also have one at 12 o'clock today, Mountain Standard Time, if you're interested in learning about different search strategies and ways that you can go about finding internship opportunities, because I know that sometimes that can be difficult. And so I will promise to get this recording out as well as the resources. And David, if you want to share over those courses, that would be great. And I'll be sure to send that out. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much, David. I can't wait to see where you land. And good luck to the rest of you, and hope to see you in some of the other sessions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Addison. Nice to meet
Take
everyone.
care.
Take
Thank
care.
you.